Hey everybody, Yankee here. Before I start this video, I want to do a little bit of a disclaimer. This video is liable to trigger a lot of people. You're going to get angry. Your knee-jerk reaction is going to be like, "Ooh, screw this guy. Oh, you're a communist," or whatever you do when someone disagrees with you or says something you disagree with. So I'm going to ask everyone out there that falls into that category to do two things. One, take a breath. Think for a second. Is your knee-jerk reaction, your initial reaction, is that the right reaction? Or after you think about what I said, do you actually agree more than you thought you did to begin with? And two, if you still don't agree with me, and you're the type of person that can't handle opinions that you don't agree with, and you decide you want to unsub or call me a communist, or, even though that's not what communism is, but that seems to be what a lot of people like to do. If you want to do that, the only thing I ask is think of your own dignity and leave quietly. Because when someone throws a fit about how I can't handle your opinion, so I'm leaving, so I never have to hear it again, you're not really saying anything negative about me. You're showing something negative about you. So have some dignity and leave quietly if you're someone that can't handle contrary opinions. And with that being said, let's get to the video. Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Inside Guns with your host, me, the Yankee Marshal. Today, I want to talk about something that seems to be getting a lot of applause from the right side of the aisle today, when it really should be getting nothing but boos. People should be upset by this, but for some reason, a lot of people are very happy about it. It's where President Trump, or former President Trump, depending on how you look at it, I guess, said that once he is in office, if he wins in 2024, on his first day, he's going to get rid of birthright citizenship. Now, it's not quite as bad what he said as the media is trying to portray it. A lot of media sources are like, he swore he's going to abolish the 14th Amendment on his first day in office. That's not actually what they said. They said nothing about abolishing the 14th Amendment. They said what they were going to do is issue an executive order that would define what it meant. But still, even though that's not as bad as abolishing it, that's something that people in the pro-gun community should be disgusted by. It's something we should be up in arms at. Something we should be saying, no, you can't do that. Don't say stupid shit like that. For one, it's not the place of the president to interpret the law, period. That is the court's job. In fact, I see a lot of people don't seem to understand that, because when I was reading up on this, reading the comment sections of the articles talking about this, a lot of people were like, whenever anybody would say this is up to the courts to decide, not the president, they'd be like, the court shouldn't be able to write laws, and, that's not their job. They're legislating from the bench, blah, blah, blah. That's exactly their job. That's why they exist, to interpret the laws as they exist, to interpret and implement. So that is their job, not the job of the president. He doesn't get to say, this is what this actually means. That's not the president's job at all, and you should not be okay with a president thinking that is their job. Because here's the thing. If you accept the fact that any president could say, well, the 14th Amendment clearly doesn't mean, anyone just born here, even though it says anyone born here, it doesn't include certain people. Because if you accept that the president can do that and not the courts, which I do believe the courts should rule on that as to whether it applies to just someone who runs across the border and squats, whether that counts, which I don't think it should, because that was originally written to give African Americans citizenship when the people were trying to stop former slaves and their children from actually being considered citizens. So the 14th Amendment was righting a terrible wrong, but now it's being used to far too great of a degree to just allow, like I said, anyone who manages to get across the border before they drop a baby to somehow have an anchor here now to stay. And that is not right, and the courts should do something about that. But it shouldn't be the president. Because here's the thing, if you accept that Trump can do that, Well, then what would stop Biden from saying, here's an executive order that clearly defines what the Second Amendment means. It clearly just means members of a militia, and now the National Guard is the militia, so it just means the National Guard. If you accept Trump can do that, you have to accept that Biden can do that, unless you want to be a hypocrite, which seems not to be a problem for most people. So they're okay with being hypocrites. In fact, most people I know that scream, we need smaller government. Government needs to be out of our lives. Then they go, oh, I don't like what those people are doing in their bedroom. Government needs to write a law about that. Or I don't like what that private business is doing. Government needs to write a law about that. So most people are hypocrites. I don't like that at all myself. In fact, we were talking the other night about this right to repair law. And even though I do believe people should have a right to repair their stuff, but I don't think the government should be the one telling manufacturers and private industries how they do their business. It should be us, the consumer, telling them how they do their business. If Apple or John Deere doesn't want you to be able to fix the products you buy from them, unless you take it back to them, well, then I would say then the answer to that is, as a free market, we don't buy Apple or John Deere. We buy something else. And we say, well, when you allow us to be able to start fixing our products, we'll start buying your product again. That's how I think that should be handled. I don't think it's the role of the government. Even though I do agree people should be able to fix their stuff that they buy, they own it. But I don't agree with government getting involved in that. Same thing with trans people in sports. I don't agree with trans men or trans women, I guess what would it be, a man that's becoming a woman, someone who's genetically a male, someone whose sex is male, they have a Y chromosome. They shouldn't be able to compete against women in sports. But do I think the government should be writing laws about that? No, that's not the role of government. That is far expanding their role. The founders never said, hey, the government should police every activity of what's right and wrong in society. No, that should be up to the organizations that run those sports. That should be up to the colleges that have teams. If the Women's Tennis Association goes, you know what, we're going to allow people with penises in a dress to compete against the women, then that's up to them as far as I'm concerned. And you know what I would do if they did that? Well, I would go to some people with some deep pockets and say, you know what? The Women's Tennis Association is doomed because of this decision. Let's start the Female Tennis Association, to where you have to be genetically female to compete. And eventually that would replace the Women's Tennis Association because people would not agree with the men competing. The women wouldn't. They wouldn't want to compete there. They'd want to switch over to the other one because I don't think women want trans women competing against them in sports. That doesn't mean they don't say, you live your life, sister. Be who you want to be. I'll respect that. It just means, yeah, but you still can't compete in sports because you're still a man. And that's just reality. So I don't agree that it's the government's role to make these decisions. I agree. I think it's the people's role to make these decisions. And if you think it's the government's, well, then stop saying you're about small government. You're not. You're about government controlling every aspect of your life. Or you're at least about government controlling every aspect of someone else's life. And if you accept that the government can tell them what to do, you have to accept that the government can tell you what to do. If you accept the government can tell that business what they got to do, you can accept that the government can tell your business what it can do. And if you accept the government telling people what they can't do, you have to accept them being able to tell people what they can do. So if you're actually for small government, this is not the role of government, just like it's not the role of the president to interpret the 14th Amendment. No more so than it would be Biden's right to interpret the Second Amendment. It would be a disastrous, that's the word I'm looking for. I think that, now I don't even know if that's a word now that I say it out loud. I'm a little loopy today, by the way, just in case you haven't noticed, because I had to black in the underside of my green brim here because it was, you could see through it during the green screen. And I just colored it in with a Sharpie, and the fumes are making me a little bit woozy. So if I go off track a little bit today, which I think I've done already several times, that's probably why. Plus, I left the door open to my studio, and Django is outside the door that's outside my studio door, staring at me the whole time I'm doing this. So he's making me nervous. But like I said, getting back to the subject, it doesn't matter if you love President Trump and you disagree with birthright citizenship. It's not the president's job to do that. They don't get to define the Constitution. They don't get to define an amendment. That's the job of the courts, and they need to do it. So don't try to have it both ways. Don't think it's okay when a president or someone exceeds their authority as long as you agree with them, but it's not when you disagree with them, because you don't have a leg to stand on if you do it that way. If you're a hypocrite, no one cares about your opinion. So stand strong and say the Constitution is the Constitution, and the last word on the Constitution is, by definition, the courts. That's the way the Founding Fathers set up our three-ring government. Remember the old Schoolhouse Rock thing about the three-ring circus? That's how it's set up. That's what they meant for it to do. So president doesn't get to do that. Stop being okay with it just because you agree with it. Have some principle, have some backbone, stand strong for every amendment, including the Second Amendment. Because if you don't, like I said, you're a hypocrite, and no one cares what a hypocrite thinks.